Okay, hi everyone. I just wanted to make a quick kind of little lesson on the basics of setting up a scene in high immersion VR, and there was just a couple of things that I wanted to kind of go over. So basically here you can see that I always try and set up my assets folder with a bunch of folders, even though they're empty. I haven't made any shaders, I haven't made any scripts yet, I actually have made a scene, so I'll actually pull that scene into there, and then prefabs, I don't have any, and models and materials. So this material is just what I've made for the floor. So this kind of just keeps everything organized, so I find it very easy to work and to start a new project with making all your folders ahead of time. So that being said, I've just pretty much set up a simple scene with a floor plane at 0, 0, 0, and I've made it 10 by 10 and 0.5, and then I've put this little cube on top. And I just wanted to show something with this cube. Often people get really struggle with things that fall through planes and stuff like that, and that's all because of this little button is trigger. So let's just first play without is trigger, and you'll see my cube just sits on the floor, and I've got use gravity on, and it just sits there. And then if I put is trigger on, then all of a sudden you're going to see that it's falling through the floor. So the reason why this happens is because is trigger will trigger a piece of code. Rather, it'll trigger the collider on the floor object and on the box object, and then that will trigger code to tell them what to do now that the box has collided with the floor. So it's not going to do anything if it hasn't been told to do anything. So this is often misunderstood here. So okay, besides that, another thing that's very important for setting up a scene is understanding how your camera works. And I find often that people don't know about this clipping plane, and the clipping planes are very important because if you were to set that to 100, you'd see in my camera preview that it's still fine. I can see a little bit of brown, but it's still fine. But if this was set to 10 or even just 1, you wouldn't see anything. You can see on here how close the square has come to the camera. So that kind of determines how far into the distance everything's going to be rendered. So it's very important to keep that in mind when making a game, because obviously the further you want it to render, the more power it's going to take and the less efficient your program might be. But it might be very important if they're outside to actually render further, and when they're inside to render less, because there's no point rendering past all the walls that the user's ever going to see. So that's just something to keep in mind when setting up your scenes and stuff. So, and then another thing, I like to give stuff meaningful names once I know what they are. Right now this cube is just a cube and it's nothing nothing else, so I'm just going to keep it as cube in the thing. So now if I go to my assets store, you're going to have to consider which SDK, which software development kit you want to use to do your VR project. So I'm just going to use the Steam VR plugin. And the reason why I'm choosing to use that is I find that, especially with their new updates, it works a lot better on all the different systems, and it's generally quite user-friendly. Well, it's actually a lot more user-friendly now. So you can see I can just import that into my thing because I've done all the updates. But if you want to see what the updates are, you can just open up this releases and kind of see what's happened since you've last imported into a project. And you can also get older versions if you need to, but just keep in mind that they are constantly updating it, and it's always good to stay up to date with this kind of stuff because they're generally trying to make your life as a developer easier, not harder. So it's always good for me just to figure out kind of how the new system works and to keep going with that. But if you already have a particular system in mind or that you've already built, I think it's also good just to maybe stay there if you're not comfortable with re-importing and moving stuff around. But in a couple of my own projects, I found it very useful to just rebuild it on the new Steam VR, because the old Steam VRs were very buggy with Oculus, and now they seem to have actually built support for a lot more different virtual reality devices. Okay, so that being said, I'm just importing this into my project. Okay, so as you can see, it's done, and it's going to ask you this maybe 1 or 2 times. In the old Steam VR plugins, it asked me this every time I made a change to any little thing. So you just go accept all. It's going to make a snarky comment that you made the right choice. So great, you made the right choice. Okay, so now getting back to our scene, you're going to see that a whole new folder has appeared, and this is the Steam VR folder. So now you're probably going to be looking at all of this and going, oh my word, I don't even know where to start, what to do. It all just looks very kind of overwhelming at first, and if you go into the interaction system folder, which seems unintuitive, but if you go in there and you go to core and then you go into prefabs, you're going to see that there's a player prefab. And okay, you can just search for this, but I find it actually very helpful just to know where it is and go there directly, because when you search for player, you might come up with a whole bunch of different ones and then you don't really know. So your player is going to appear, and it's going to appear at 000, which is kind of what we want. And you're going to see that even though the camera looks like it's sitting on the floor, the whole body is up here, and your two little hands are over here, and they're not rendering yet, and that's just because it's unnecessary to render two little hand models. Okay, so you're going to see that this kind of happens. So you can delete your other camera, unless you want to keep it for testing, then that's fine too. But you can delete this camera, and then you'll see that with this player, pretty much everything's already set up for you. And that's what's nice about the Steam VR plugin, is that they've kind of already done all the hard work. They've got this VR camera, and this is where what I said earlier comes into play. So the clipping planes on this camera is actually only 300, and you can keep it at 300. 300's a pretty good distance, but I find when I have outdoor scenes, I like it to be about 1,000. So just keep it at that, and you might want to keep this near as possible, because with VR it's much more adapted to how our eyes see, so it's important to try and keep that the same. Okay, so just yeah, so that's probably the only thing you might want to change. You might find stuff's not rendering properly and you won't know why, and it's just that small little thing over there. And then if you look here, you've got your right hand and your left hand, and it's got all these different hover point stuff, and not all of this is actually necessary for a basic build. In fact, I've found you can actually take out all of this and remove some of the code, obviously, and you'll actually be fine just to have a left hand and a right hand as it is. But so they come with a generic model on the left hand, and it's often not known that you can actually change this model. You can make your own model. It's very different to do, but they come with all these cute little alien hands and floppy hands, and they come with a red black glove and a blue black glove, and they come with all these crazy idea things, but it's actually, you'd think you'd have to click on the ones with the picture, but in fact, if you, let's say, wanted the VR glove model, then you'd actually have to take this. So let's say, which hand am I in? I'm in the left hand. So so this one's just called the VR glove model, and that's just the model itself. So you don't want to be putting this one on your thing. So you're actually gonna want to either use the left render model slim or the left render model floppy. So floppy is obviously this one, and slim, I think, if I remember correctly, correlates to the blue one. But you can just play around with that, and you'll see actually just by looking at this little game object scene that the VR plugin comes with a lot of cool little objects that you can use in your games and stuff like that. So that's just basically how I would set it up. So I would usually change my hand models to suit my experience, or you can get new hand models in the asset store if that's what you feel like. You can make your own assets on Blender or Maya or whatever you're comfortable. Sorry. So just have a look around at how it works, and then let's say you want, the interaction system of teleport. So if we go back to that interaction system folder and we go to prefabs, and then you get teleporting and teleport point. Okay, so point is going to be a whole region of points in your scene that a user can select and then move to, but teleporting takes in an area. So I'll show you just teleporting. So I'm just going to drag that into the drop down, so just right under player, not in player, and then you'll see here that it's got everything already kind of set up for you, everything's in place and all of that stuff. So now you're probably thinking, but how does it know which area to teleport on? So now you're going to want to teleport on your floor. So you want your floor to be your collider. So if we go to our floor, you see it's already got a mesh collider, but now we need to add a teleport area. And if you type teleport, it comes up already, teleport area, and then you'll see that it kind of changes the look of your floor. So you might want to play around with different tick boxes and stuff, but there's a lot of things you can do to change that. But as far as I'm concerned, I think this is just to show you while you're in edit mode, but in game mode your floor should still be your floor. So the camera's actually in the floor there, so if I was, oh no, I'm moving the wrong thing, but if you actually were on top of the floor, you would still see the floor below you. But yeah, so that's just a basic way to set up different things. It's just about importing the stuff that you want to use. So if you wanted to use a longbow, you just bring in the prefabs that are necessary, and it's all explained online in other videos. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little lesson on setting up your VR for high immersion and all the different things, all the little things that you need to consider when setting up a project. And yeah, hope you have a good day.